No, but I'll have it on the screen.
Hey, welcome, Laura.
Hey, guys.
Okay, so as I said earlier, Chairman Berlin is not able to make it tonight, so Supervisor Nager will be chairing the meeting.
She's excited too. Woohoo. We can call this meeting to order. Lori, if you can do a roll call
Lori's not here today, so I'll start. Negro,
here.
Kinney,
Here.
Stendor, Ellefson,
Here.
and Mr. Berlin has to be excused.
Okay. Next is approval of agenda. Anybody have any questions, comments, changes? Like it?
Yeah, the DA is asked to be able to move up front and he has pending court business. So he'd like to be number 7A.
Okay. I have a motion.
Is that soon enough for your schedule, or could we move you up earlier in the agenda, right after,
Bart or by Bart?
prior to Bart, after 4? Yeah, so this is Pat, I'll make a motion that we move the DA budget up to 5 on the agenda. And then this is Pat, with that amendment, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
And then there's just us. So all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Hi.
Okay. Next is public comments, 3 minutes per person. Is there anyone in house that wants to speak? Seeing nobody making eye contact, I'll say no. Anyone online for public comment? Anyone online for public comment? Anyone online for public comment? Okay, we'll close public comment. And we'll go on to approval of the Finance and Economic Development meeting minutes from July 28th, 2022.
This is Pat, I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
I have a
This is
motion.
Blake.
I have a motion by Pat, a second by Blake. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Hi.
Okay, that passes. And next, ta-da, we have a DA. Go ahead.
Speaker.
There you go.
Is that now on? First of all, board members and Administrator Grady, thank you for the opportunity this morning to speak, and I think it'll be very brief based on the scope of our budget request. We are a small office. I suspect not the smallest budget within the county, but close to it. Part of that is the result of the state funding of the prosecutor positions and related technology. My general comments were laid out in a letter back on July 21st to Dan. I assume that that's been passed on to the board members. With respect to the largest component of our budget, it is the salary of our staff. And I would ask the county to devote all possible resources to providing all county employees with the requested 8.6% increase in salaries. I believe that's warranted for many reasons. I mentioned a few in my letter, but I think the board is aware of the arguments as to why the current pay levels for county employees simply do not meet the needs of the county as an employer or its employees. So again, I would be asking on behalf of our office that the requested salary increase be put in place by the county. With respect to the other aspects of our budget, there are very few of those expenses are discretionary. We have mandatory costs which come about from prosecuting cases. Those costs continue to go up. Our office supply and the physical supplies necessary to run the office continue to increase. Those increases haven't been large. I have to say that they will likely continue in the future. We are physically in an office probably less than half the size of this room with 7 employees. We have not made any request obviously for additional positions or any capital requests, but we continue to try to make do with what are challenging physical limitations on our office. I think in some, as I stated in my letter, this is a bare bones budget request by our department. What I understand was forwarded in the spreadsheet from the administrator reflects, other than an adjustment for insurance, just what our office has requested, and I think it's entirely warranted based on our circumstances. I'd be glad to entertain any questions about any specific items in the budget that we've requested.
Does anybody have any questions? Blake? Okay. Looks like no
And
question.
thank you for putting me on the agenda early on.
It
And
was-
if there are any other follow-ups, obviously, please feel free to contact the office. So, thank you.
Oh, Dan has questions.
No, I just have a comment. So this budget is essentially the same as this year's with a maybe a
Yes.
couple $1,000 difference for increased, like, an example, publication subscriptions is a little bit higher, service of papers is a little higher. But essentially, it's the same budget as this year. The only difference, major difference, is wages. So whatever percentage the county board ends up deciding upon is the big difference. That, and when we decide on health insurance, is the other big difference. As with all of, and that's going to be true with all the budgets you see today. The wages and health insurance are generally the 2 biggest differences. And retirement for all of them too is a difference. That changed from 0.65%, 6.5% to 6.8%. And that's mandated by the state. So that's the only comment I have. It's essentially the same other than whatever wages and health insurance.
I agree. And I think in my letter, the office supplies were driven in large part by large increases in printer toner. We have more service fees now. Part of that resulting from Zoom appearances where defendants typically don't have to be in the courtroom where we can serve them, but we do have to go out and pay for service of legal papers. So that's where the increase in those parts of the budget come from. Thanks again.
All right, and we'll not be asking for final approval on these budgets because these will all come back to Finance Committee at least once, probably twice. So we're just asking for initial, does this look okay? Where do we need to move from here?
Pat, you're up.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the time. I'm coming to you looking for a little increase in our budget, mainly due to wages. Bart has been underpaying for many years, still is. And we're looking to increase our wages to retain and hire. I've lost 2 full-time employees this year to other entities, mainly due to wages. I've been advertising since early spring, trying to hire, and at our wages, I'm not getting applicants and I'm having a very difficult time. I've asked our board to increase our wage, starting wage by increase to $17 an hour for CDL drivers. And I'm now, which was approved, and I'm now starting to get applicants to hire drivers. And try and get back to full staff, because if I lose one more employee now, I'm going to have to start shutting services down. So my main, as you, the sheet I gave you kind of goes back to 2007, showing the what contributions have been and the increases, and we haven't had an increase for several years. With this increase I'm asking for, I've been asked by I've gone to all the partners asking for the increase. It's been very well received. I've been asked for 3 years at this rate, and I have extended that to the other entities. I'm looking at other ways to cut costs. I've recently received a grant to put up solar panels to cut down on expenses. We are looking at electric buses to cut down on fuel. And as we all know, fuel kind of hurt us this year. So there is a little bit in here for increase in fuel costs. But like I said, the majority of this is just to increase wages to get us more competitive to other entities in the area. Plus also we've surveyed all the transit systems around to try and get where it's where they're at. I guess that's kind of what I had. I guess I need to open up to any questions if you have for me.
I do want to state Chair Pufall wanted me to let everybody know he's 100% in support of this increase.
And I can definitely reflect that hiring bus drivers is a really hard thing to do, because I'm having the same problem. Every time I get one on, they're gone. So
Hey, I just had one question. Is there a community element or a business that donates to your funding at all, or is it all coming from county? Because I just see a small portion here, so how much of it is coming from outside sources? And I'm sorry, just educational wise, I guess.
Yes, so a little background. BART was formed in 1981 by the Red Cliff Odana tribes, the city of Ashland, city of Washburn, city of Bayfield, Ashland County, and Bayfield County. The amount you're paying is for the core route, which runs between Odana and Red Cliff. And in that charter, when they started it, it was agreed that all entities would pay an equal portion towards it. Which is has been the 13,850. There's other services we provide that are paid for, like the city of Ashland also pays for the city of Ashland service, the bus in the city of Ashland. Bayfield County, city of Washburn also pay for the Blue Goose service in the city of Washburn. So there's other service, the other entities do pay more. It's just that they're paying for other services that are also offered. The Ashland County just contributes to the core service.
Thank you.
Pat,
So Blake, the question you asked is a good question and a good reminder that BART relies on the partners that so far have committed to remain committed. So when we come back later in the fall on the budget, my main question to you would be, have all of the other partners agreed to supporting the wages going to $17 an hour? Because it's important to keep everybody, literally on board with funding you as needed so that you can function. Because if you start losing, not just drivers, you start losing routes, and it's a house of cards pretty quickly, is my understanding.
Yes.
So, so if everybody else commits to that, then that would be good.
So right now, the commitments I know for sure I have are, well, City of Ashland put it in their budget. It's gonna go before their council. Obviously, it's up to them. City of Bayfield is putting it on their budget, go before council. Bayfield County, they just agreed to it. Their increase is substantially more, but they also pay, I think they're over 50,000 that they pay for the services that they fund. Let's see, who did I miss? City of Washburn is putting it on their agenda in their budget. Again, for city council approval, but all of them have said they're in favor of, they're not, matter of fact, the city administrator said, looking back through the years, what we're asking for in an increase for them, which was $1,000 more than this, was minimal and understood what we needed as they've lost people to other entities. Even Price County, who is going to be joining us as a partner for the services they paid up for down there, which is in excess of $80,000. Their increase was very well received with them also. So I have not seen any negativity. Everybody understands the impact of wages since COVID's hit and how the wage scales have gone up. And they understand the importance of the transit service, all transit service up here. It's very much needed. And I understand it, as some of you may have known, I used to chair this committee, and I fully understand where you are at, and I've felt your pain and sitting in these seats to try and balance this budget. So I really understand all that, and I hope you can do the best you can for us, which I know you will, and try and get us a $2,000 increase and to continue to maintain the service level that we have. I will tell you the two tribes did go to give us this extra 2,000 a couple years ago. So they have been at this 15,850 for a couple years.
Any more questions? Blake, you good? Okay, thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
Next we have a presentation from M3.
Great. Can everybody hear me?
Sounds great.
Awesome. Thank you. Hey, Dan, are you able to pull up the information, or do you want? Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate the time this morning. Dan just wanted me to come and share with you guys a little bit of a status of where we're at with the health insurance and the dental insurance. So this first document here is really a forecast that our underwriting team put together for you to review. This does make some assumptions based on medical trend and prescription trend, which you can see at the top. We blend those two trends together to show an overall increase of 6.4% from a trend perspective. We do use that when calculating through the rates. So you can see there are 2 years that we're looking at, and they are rolling. So it is a 6/1/20 to 5/31/21, and then a 6/1/21 to a 5/31/22. So those rolling months, it looks specifically at your paid medical claims, your paid prescription claims, which you can see listed there. And then we take out any claims that were above the stop loss. So as you can see, we've had 2 years of running with some fairly significant stop loss claims. And then if you can scroll down, Dan, so then we calculate out the adjusted claims based on taking those claims out. We add back in contracts, we look at claims per year. We do trend forward to make sure we're looking at this as though it was a 12-month period. We do weight the current year versus the previous year differently. And then the result is that you guys currently have 135 contracts on your plan. The projected plan year in medical claims is the 2.8 million. And then that middle box right there that we're showing is the fixed cost. That is what we have to pay for in order to continue your self-funded health plan. It includes the stop loss, the benefit, third-party administrator, BPA, and the network fees. You can see there that we have included a 15% increase on your stop loss. So that is projecting that 15% onto those numbers. So your total fixed cost would increase to $905,011 for 2023. And then we add those numbers together for a projected overall plan year expenditure of 3.7. Projected funding with current rates is 3.2, which leaves us with a projected increase for 2023 of 15.29%. Now that is without any plan changes. That is just simply taking the plan you guys put in place last year and adding 15.3%. If we can move to the next document, this actually gives you a really nice snapshot in time of where your plan is at today. So you can see in the top left corner, it's plan year to date funding ratio. So prior month, we were at 109% loss ratio. This month, we're at 101.8, which means that we had a lower cost month of claims coming through. These numbers are through the 31st of July claims. Then you can see the plan year to date funding difference. So that means the amount of money we've paid in versus how much we've had in claims. That is at a negative. It is definitely less than it was last month, but it's still at a deficit, which creates the 101.8% loss ratio. The 24,392 is your average cost per employee per year in that middle blue box. And then on the right-hand side, it's just the breakdown of all of those pieces. The total plan cost, the net medical claims. If we can scroll down, yep. So you can see that graph right there is really a nice depiction of kind of where your claims are at. So the accrual or the numbers that the rates we had set, and then where your actual numbers are coming in based on claims throughout the year. If we go to the next page, it actually shows it in a little bit more detail so you can see the plan costs, the total variable costs, the total plan costs. So that includes your medical paid claims per month and your prescription drug cost per month. And as you can see, we had a couple rough months. January was tough, as was March, April, and May. The other 3 months look to be a little bit more in line with where we'd like claims to be. So currently you guys have, I do not have this in a document because it does contain personal health information, but you guys currently have 6 claims over the stop loss amount of $65,000, and you have 8 claims that are over $32,000, so halfway to the stop loss amount. So you guys do have 14 high cost claimants right now currently on your plan. The majority of those claims are ongoing. Dan, if you can scroll to the next page, that would be great. So again, these are just graphs. This is all the same information. It's just showing it in a bunch of different ways so that you guys can review it in the way that works best for you. Great. So then any questions on the medical side before I launch into dental?
Pat?
On the first page, you had the previous year weighted as 70% and the year before is 30%. Why those weights?
That's just what we do from an underwriting perspective because we believe, we can change those. So if you wanted to see them weighted differently, we could definitely do that. Our hopes in general terms is that your current year is better than your previous. But for you guys, that's obviously not the case. So if you wanted me to shift that weighting, I could go a 60-40 or even a 50-50 to see what that would look like to break those numbers out differently. And we do that for some groups who believe that they're trending in a more healthy way than they had been for this current year that they're in.
It seems to me, I'll let you respond to this. It seems to me, let's say we had a 10% increase from one year to the next. And so that the previous year would be 110% of the year before that, 2 years ago at 100%, and then weight those So 110 and 100 is 210. And so the previous year would be 110 parts out of 210, and 2 years ago would be 100 parts out of 210. That way, they would be weighted equally with the adjustment for costs. And I'm thinking about this from the perspective of, we've had a somewhat hard time estimating how much we need to set aside for health insurance. And a couple of years ago, it really struck me the way they were doing this. They were just taking like 3 years, I think, old data and averaging it, which didn't account for the inflation rate. So they were consistently, and I mean consistently, underestimating what they needed to set aside for healthcare. And I think in my mind, that was the single biggest factor of why the county got behind, is they just averaged it 3 years instead of weighting them according to the increases in inflation. And so the 70 to 30 doesn't strike me as an appropriate weighting. The other factor would be if we have a large enough pool of people, which we may, so that the variability in health kind of averages out, so there's not too much difference given the size of the pool. But I think we'd be closer if we weighted these different. We'd have less variability in our budget process and what we need to set aside.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk to my underwriting team about that. This really, we do leave up to our actuaries and all the work that they've done with all of our self-funded health plans. So I'm happy to have that conversation with them and bring your perspective forward and see what they think we can do from that perspective. I do know that we have just recently started working with you guys. So our method is definitely not taking the average of 3 years and calculating it. We do take into account your actual claims and look at the history of that. And then we weight it for these 2 years to come up with that cost. So I will happily bring that back and ask those questions and report back to Dan on that.
Okay, and I guess from our end, we have to decide when we look at how much we're setting aside for healthcare, if we're going to use, the numbers we're seeing here, if we're going to use, some other method in history on coming to that number.
Correct. And I will happily pull that together, and I will also do some surveying. We do work with a fair amount of counties, and I can work with them too to determine how they're doing it, just from a broad perspective, to see, to make sure that we are actually funding appropriately for your expense.
Hey, it seems like there was some positive news for once with something. So good job the last couple months, and claims paid getting lower. Is there a traditional, like, historically increase in certain months? Like January was high, or is very inconsistent as far as look back? And then if the months ahead continue to trend somewhat better and are in line with expectations, does some of this stuff come back to us looking better then from a cost standpoint, or is it fixed now and this is what you're kind of giving us to look forward?
No, great questions, Blake. So months wise and claims, it really does vary. It depends on when people have those large claims, right? Which is where the months are coming, where we're seeing the variance in months. It really is just based on when someone has, sadly, generally something kind of tragic happen, right? So we don't see any pattern in those months when we're looking at the claims. As it relates to your pricing, so this is initial pricing, Blake, and we do believe with the continued reduction in claims that will help us moving forward. So what that means from a renewal perspective is we generally like to wrap up our renewals in September, because that gives everyone enough time to perform open enrollment and do those things. With your group, we may want to wait until mid-October, because we want the claims months to continue to go down. And if we see that in August, and we can also expect that in September, then yes, I do think that could change this overall cost perspective. So that does matter. And any other questions on the medical?
I have some comments, but it's mostly the same broken record stuff I keep bringing up. Are we working on a partnership with MMC to have some better costs? Because in our spend, that's where our spend is the biggest, because we don't seem to have any kind of preferred partnership with them. And a lot of people go there. Also any carve outs on medications, and then, my third one. I'll think of my third one.
Okay, can I comment
Well-
on the first two
Oh, and the
before?
wellness
bef-
plan.
Yep, perfect.
Dan's like,
So-
I know what this.
I appreciate that. I actually have a meeting with the hospital in September. So I do feel like there's gonna be some traction in that position. So I do think and I hope that we can get to a good place with them. Now I lost your second one.
Second one was any carve outs with any medication.
Carve out, yep. So we have looked at this the last 2 years and the carve outs. The reality for your group right now is you guys do not have a lot of specialty spend on your medications.
Okay.
So does that mean that we want to make a consideration to move to someone who can help us handle that before we have people on those medications? I do think we want to consider that, because at this point we could do it and have very little to almost zero issues with the people that are on their current medications, right? So we wouldn't have a lot of disruption if we did it now, and then we would be prepared for if someone came in and had a high cost drug and a specialty medication that we could help them with. So that is something to consider. And I am, we're happy to take a look at that for you guys again and just see. There was not a lot of savings on the table, which is generally when we see groups doing it. But again, if we're doing it as a proactive measure, I do think that's beneficial. And in regards to wellness, I actually have a proposed wellness plan that we put together that we're going to review after we talk about the dental.
Okay. I'm very excited about that wellness plan, and yeah, I like proactive with the medications and stuff,
Pharmacy.
so, yeah, so that way we can, I'd rather see us get ahead of something for once instead of constantly being on the back end of it.
Yep. Okay. I will put together some proposals and bring those forward to Dan and Heather. I'm just making a couple notes for myself. So when it comes to your dental, you guys, we are working with you guys from a consulting perspective. And so what that allows us to do is just, we do not currently work with you on your dental plan. However, it allowed us the capacity to work with Delta, who's your provider, gather some claims, and have our underwriting and risk management team take a look at your plan to try to help you guys get to rates that would allow you to fund this benefit at 100% rather than at the deficit that it's currently at. So similar to how we look at the health plan, we took a look at the dental plan. We compared 2 rolling years next to each other. Your dental paid claims are up this year. That is really what we're seeing as the trend because of COVID. Lots of people were holding off on some of those bigger dental procedures, and we're not getting them done. So we have seen an increase in dental claims over the last year. We do expect that to balance itself out throughout the rest of this year. So these are the same basic numbers looking at claims. The difference with dental versus health, as we all know, is this is a capitated rate, right? So there's an annual maximum, and it's a much easier number to then articulate and kind of flow through. So if we can scroll down to the next section, Dan, that would be great. So you guys currently have 120 on the plan. You guys are with Delta Dental, you're self-funded. So that means that you have an admin rate of $4.76 with them. We believe the overall plan, your expenditures are about 120. With your current rates, the projected funding is at about 60,900, which is, almost 100% underfunded. And with the COBRA rates that we're suggesting, it's a little bit more than that as well. So the best way to look at this, you guys, is in that box at the bottom. So this shows the lives that you have on the plan. It also shows your current funding rate. So right there, you have a employee paying 25, an employee plus 1 paying 35, an employee plus family paying 50. That rate for a family and an employee plus 1 are way less than what we see in market trend. And so what we've done is just taken this out in multiple ways to look at it. So if we were going to calculate your funding rates and we were working on those, we would say your current COBRA funding rates would need to be 50 for single, 75 for employee plus one, and 150 for family. So then we calculated that funding rate versus current and looked at 3 different ways that you guys could change your rates internally for employees and their families in order for you guys to fund appropriately. So in every situation, it would require an increase. We do believe the proposed funding rates on the end at the 3119 for single, 6454 for employee plus one, and the family to 111.64 is the fairest way to go, because that truly is kind of how the spend happens on dental. Singles have the least amount, families have the most amount. So this would be a very big change for you guys, but we are just trying, and there's also, again, you guys fund this internally, it's self-funded. So you could also take these numbers and maybe not increase them as drastically, but give everyone a little bit of a bump in order to get you to a better place with how you're currently funding. Any questions on the dental?
Blake, you have anything?
No,
You guys have anything? Pat?
For Blake, was it only last summer we spent a lot of time on this? We spent a ton of time on this sort of stuff last summer. And dental last summer was something that there was some discussion, at least on the part of the previous administrator, of cutting. And the finance committee and the board kept dental in, so a bump, you know, I know it bites, but it's still better than cutting it. And I think it's something that's really, really important to keep in there. We didn't have dental insurance growing up, and I sure wish we did. But I guess I do have a question related to this. The dentist I go to, there's 2 in the office, but they only have 1 there at a time because of COVID. That way, you know, they both don't get COVID. Is there some reason why in dental offices, because of COVID, that they're being more cautious about the number of people in there? And does that have implications for long-term costs for dental care if COVID continues to be an issue?
I think that's a really interesting question. I have seen the same thing. Even at my dental office, they ended up putting in a whole brand new filtration system. We have to wear all different kinds of protective gear. I really think it's because of how COVID is passed along to other people, right? And so I think that's why there are some who are being extra cautious, because they also don't want to be the dental clinic. They want to keep performing or keep being able to see patients, but they don't want to be the reason why patients get sick. We have not discussed this overall from a cost impact to dental plans moving forward. We are still really hoping that over the next year that we see everything balance back out. I have not heard otherwise from any of my colleagues or my risk management team. So that's really our hope, is that they balance out and we don't continue to see an increase in dental rates. So if there's no more questions, I'll have Dan go to the next page. The next document is, it is very detailed, but it is a base wellness strategy that we put together for the County of Ashland. It's something that our wellness director has been working on for over the last year, but we do think that it's a way for you guys to consider adding a wellness program without adding a vendor at extra cost, but without adding a ton of work onto the team at the county as well. So if we can go to that 3-year planning timeline, Dan, that would be great. So this is where we really want to say, here's the introduction to wellness. These are the different things that we do. And then we're going to plan out very clear strategic things to happen in year 1, year 2, and year 3. Obviously, this is just a template for what that document would look like and how we would do that. We'll have target dates included. We'll really build this out with the team. And the reality for us is that we look at it in a few different ways. We look at it in what people's strengths are. We look at where some of the weaknesses might be, where we can look at your internal reporting on your health and dental plans and figure out what those things look like. Then we take those weaknesses and we make them into opportunities. And then we also take a look at what are the high cost things that we know we don't have control over, and how can we potentially look at those threats and kind of take some action steps, hopefully, to eliminate some of them as we move forward with your plan. But the reality is we want to get a group of people together at the county that we can sit down and build out a wellness program with. We want to come up with our mission statement, our vision statement, our strategy, our goals and objectives overall. Mission statement, we have a couple in here that are just things that we've worked on. Well-being, BU, making sure that we're looking at people as an overall total individual instead of just considering their physical health when it comes to a wellness program. So those are all different things that we'll want to take into consideration. But we do have a wellness director who's happy to work with a team of people to get this set up. He's not someone that can be there for every meeting, but he can definitely help with the initial setup of it and talk you guys through how we would do this and what it would look like. So if we can keep scrolling, Dan, that would be great. There's a couple more pieces coming up here. So this just talks through what it offers, but what we like to look at, if you can pause, Dan, there, go back up, please. So when we talk about, that page would be great, where it talks work-life balance. If you can scroll up a little bit. What we really talk about in regards to wellness these days is 4 different elements. So we do talk about the health and wellness of the plan, but we also want to make sure that we are looking at individuals as a whole and not just their health and their wellness aspect of it, right? So those are the pieces there. We also like to take a look at people's financial wellness. So we do not partner or consult with you guys on the financial side, but we have resources and we want to make sure that we can help you use the resources that you do have currently and help employees with that financial wellness, how to plan for retirement, making sure that we're looking at all the plans and they're seeing that total rewards that you guys are offering. And then the last component we like to look at is work-life balance. So making sure that employees understand what's happening when it comes to social, emotional, and all those other aspects of their life as well. So one of the main components of the program that we would encourage is to have everyone get an annual physical. So this is the next page, Dan, is to get an annual physical. And you can do that in a couple different ways, right? But instead of bringing someone on site and having them do biometrics, what we would encourage is to get the forms, to have a form provided to all employees where they can actually go in to their doctor like they would any other year, get a preventative exam and be able to just record that and show it to the county, right? If we do that, that is one of those first steps where we know everyone is getting their base care. And we can then take action steps from a reporting perspective to find out where we need to provide additional details when it comes to overall wellness of the population. So the other thing that we can do with the wellness program is really take some steps to make sure that we're seeing results. And what we see groups do in that situation is generally there can be a couple different things. You could get some credit towards your health insurance premium if you're doing the wellness activities. You could consider doing some sort of wellness bonus. If we want to include everyone that is employed at the county, we may want to consider doing an overall wellness program and maybe not just a premium differential on the health insurance. But there's all different kinds of ways that we can get people to participate. So step 2 of the wellness program, after you've gotten your preventative visit, we also want to make sure that people are going in and taking care of their basic things that they do on an annual basis. So an annual exam, a dental exam, any health or age gender specific screenings. This would be something like your colonoscopy or your mammogram if you're a female. And then we also include in this checklist tobacco-free or tobacco cessation programming, and then your vaccinations for the year. So getting your flu vaccine, getting your COVID vaccine, what all those things are. But those are additional ways for employees to get some points towards their wellness in order to get themselves to participate. We can set up a few different things. We can do incentives that include gift cards and gift certificates. We could do a half-day PTO. We can do all different kinds of things when we're thinking about how to incentivize people to participate. And then the step 3 of the wellness program really is going to be a health activity tracker, right? So there are a lot of programs that we have that we can offer to your group that are already put together. We can work with your carriers and put together some lunch and learns that people can participate in. But the reality is this list is really flexible and will be something that we want to work closely with some people in the county on. There may be classes or things that are offered for free through the community ed programs that we could add to this list. There might be some things through the ADRC program that we could add to this list. So there's a lot of different things we can add to this list. What we suggest groups start with is really step 1 and step 2 for your first year. And then you would add in this activity tracking in your second year of the program, as to not overwhelm a lot of people. We think that's a great way to kind of kick off this wellness program. So Dan, if you can scroll through the next couple pages, I think it basically just summarizes everything.
Kristen, I believe one of the supervisors has a question.
Go ahead. Patty.
Oh, got it. Yeah.
In the heading in blue, you have one column for employee and another column for spouse. And I'm curious with our insurance plan, there's the single, which could be the employee, but then the single +1, and that +1 isn't necessarily a spouse. And then on the wellness program, does this include kids or not include kids?
I apologize. I could not hear all of the details of that.
I'm sorry, I didn't turn on my mic, my mistake, sorry.
Okay. Thank you.
In the headings in blue,
Yep.
if there's a person that's single, they'd be the employee. But then we have another category, single +1, and the +1 isn't necessarily a spouse. So that heading a spouse, I'm not sure it's what you really want. And then a related question, if they're on a family plan and there's kids in there that are under 18, would a wellness plan also include kids? And I'm thinking in part the obesity. And then of course, kids get into things they shouldn't get into as they hit the teen years. So would kids be involved in a wellness plan?
So we cannot technically, with federal regulation, is we cannot include children under 18. So I agree with you on the spouse. I can definitely get that changed. It's just generally what we see. It could also be, if you wanted to include it, if there was a dependent over the age of 18 who wanted to participate, they could as well. However, we cannot technically include children under 18. We definitely think that they can participate in some of the activities and different programs that we put together because they can participate as a family, but we're unable to include them because of regulation. And they say that under 18 cannot be included, technically.
Yeah, so with the single +1, whatever, I don't think spouse to me is the appropriate word here, but
Yeah.
whatever +1 or whatever you do, so it doesn't suggest to someone something that's not intended, which I assume is not intended at this point.
Correct.
Kristen, could you explain more about dependents 18 to 26?
Yeah, so I mean, we do not have a lot of groups who include them in on this in order to get a premium differential or something of that nature. However, I think it's actually a really great concept, but dependents are allowed to stay on the plan until 26. So the reality is we could change that language. Instead of spouse, it could be +1 dependent over 18 and or a spouse and or partner, or however we want to say that, to include them on the plan.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Do we have any more questions? See Blake shaking his head no, Ron says no. So what we've got here is a template and basically we're just spitballing yet until we all get together and figure this out yet.
Right. The reality is this is a template of a plan that we think would be a great one to put in place. We can adapt. We can get you multiple looks at other plans. We can customize this to this plan for you guys so you can review it, or, for your team to review. We can do this in any way you want. We have a team of people that help us, help myself and my team do this. So really, I think we need to get a group of people together to decide how you want to start your committee and how we want to take these next 2 steps.
And what is the timeline on getting this all together?
We could do this at any point in the next, we could do this in the next month if you wanted to. So this really for us is something we do with a lot of our groups, and it's very much something we can turn around quickly.
Well, we're the finance committee, but wouldn't this be somebody within the county that would kind of spearhead this task force? And has that
We-
been identified yet, Dan? I guess question.
Yeah, and this whole thing would be approved by the executive committee since it's HR.
Yeah, so I think we would like to see an internal committee. You're right, Blake, right? So this isn't necessarily something this would be something you could continue to monitor and be aware of, but it's really looking for a point person internally at the county and then having them kind of take the reins and run with it. And then we will be there to support them.
Dan, do you have a timeline on this then?
I think we can probably get this done before budget is finalized.
That's cool beans. Go ahead, Mary Jo. Grab you helped so much when it came to finding the plan and things. You go right ahead.
This is Mary Jo Gingras, staff. First of all, I am so excited about this. This is something we've needed to do for a long, long time. And I would be happy to be on this committee. And then Kristen, if there is any opposition from board members about this, because it's going to take time and commitment, and there's going to be a great input of staff and board hours involved, can you give a couple just off the top of your head statistics on counties that have implemented these types of programs and what their benefit is? I mean, I don't know if you have any quick facts, but just a couple statistics on overall benefits, financial or mental health and physical health benefits that this has provided to counties.
Yeah, so I don't have anything specific. I'm happy to gather that information so you guys have it kind of from that internal perspective to be able to take this to the next steps. But what I will say, where we're seeing the biggest impact right now with wellness plans, especially since we moved to kind of this overall whole person wellness, is we're seeing the culture and the longevity of employees staying. So we're really seeing it from retaining and maintaining your employees, and that by adding these types of programs in, they start to feel the value that you value them, and we're doing this with them as kind of a group, and that they have the ability to affect the plan and affect where they work and kind of change their health in regards to mental, financial, and physical, social around that. So that's really where we're seeing the greatest impact right now.
Okay. And I think for the board in particular, if you can find any financial benefits,
Yep.
that would be helpful, because I mean, we all know that simple preventative care can go
Yeah.
a long ways with overall efficiency and costs. of
Yep,
services.
absolutely. And I'll reach out to my risk management team and my wellness team too and grab those details.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Sometime in the last year, the county board was asked to consider a policy related to vaccinations for COVID. And the board finance committee decided not to move forward with that because we were told we needed a wellness plan first. Can you give us an update, either the administrator or Kristen, as far as how, if we're going to revisit that discussion on COVID shots and incentives or consequences for lack thereof, and how the wellness plan fits into that? And so one reason I'm asking this is, if the wellness plan allows the county to move forward with something else that adds efficiency, i.e. incentives or however we do this for vaccinations to reduce the costs related to COVID, because COVID was one of our bigger costs recently.
Dan, I'm
Well-
gonna let you speak to that because I was,
Sure. Sure. Well, I put on the screen here, step 2 of is you would get an incentive or reward. So you get a slight reduction in premium if you were to get your flu shot and COVID shot. So there would be no mandatory vaccinations, but you would get a discount on your insurance. So there's an incentive to do so, but not a requirement.
And that's not going to be reflected in the premiums that we saw earlier in this presentation until there's a wellness plan in place.
I don't think we'll see in the first year any effect on premiums. People still have to go through with all these steps in the wellness program before we see any kind of premium effect.
No, I mean, if we adopt a wellness program this fall in budget season, if we do that, would we then, in our rates for employees, if they get a COVID shot, we would have another line in there for a lower premium if they are
Right.
vaccinated?
Right. Each of these items would be worth a certain discount. So if you did one, you might get a slight discount. If you did 2, you get a bigger discount. If you did a combination of all of them, you'd get a bigger discount. So yeah, it would be up to the employees to decide how much of this they really wanted to take part in and what kind of discount they're looking to get.
So for the tobacco free, my company's been doing that for several years, and that is something that should increase premiums, but it sounds like we're going to use it as, like, we can't raise rates for people who are using tobacco, correct?
actually,
Right.
Blake, we technically can have a higher rate for someone who is using tobacco. And then if they do a tobacco-free program or a tobacco cessation program, they would be eligible for that portion, right, of a reduced premium. So we technically can do that. It is not something the county has done to date, but we technically can do higher premium for tobacco users.
Anything? Just a sec. Anything else, Blake?
No, I just wanted to hear that because right now it looks like there's no impact at all. There's no consideration about tobacco usage even as a questionnaire for an employee. And this would put it as part of our wellness program, which I think is great. But I think ultimately, if somebody's using tobacco right now in my company, you pay higher. Like your insurance costs you more. And I think as we look at the costs of our county, is tobacco use, that could be a very expensive thing. So again, I don't want to say that I'm attacking that. I just want to bring that up because it's important.
Yeah, Blake, I will also do the research and find out if we can look in your health insurance claims, if there's any kind of indicator that sometimes we can tell by different things that are happening if there's a lot of tobacco use. But I think that's a number that we would want to figure out through the preventative visit and those different things, is who is actually using tobacco, right? Because then we would know if it's 25% of your population, you're right, we might want to consider an actual premium increase for it.
Yeah, on this list, in the last couple of years, the real biggest cost driver has been flu COVID. And that's what's gotten us way above our stop loss for the last couple of years.
Right.
Go ahead, Mary Jo.
One more question, Mary Jo. So I imagine if we had this list of preventative care and you're going to give different incentives for each item, that's going to be maybe a nightmare for someone to try and track, especially if someone is actually going to be checking this to hold employees accountable.
Yeah.
So
Mary-
do you have, is it an all or nothing?
What we generally see, Mary Jo, is the step one with the annual physical preventative exam is mandatory. So you have to do that to get any kind of premium discount.
Mhm.
Step two, we generally see doing a handful of these. So not all of them, but maybe we say you have to, in step two, you have to do 3 out of the 5 in order to qualify for the premium differential, right? So there's still some choice by an employee, but at the same time, we're encouraging those annual health screens and the dental and the, those different preventative exams throughout the year.
Mhm.
And then in step 3, it would be similar. So we may say to them, hey, we want to see you do between 5 and 10 of these. That
Sure.
might be like a lot. So maybe the first year we would say, hey, it's 5 to 7 of these different things. And again, this is going to be a list that we curate with your team. So we would want to include any of the fun run 5Ks that happen in town. We'd want to include, any of those kind of local activities to really get people involved socially and emotionally in their community as well, because we really do see that as a benefit for people in the longevity of their health in their life.
Sure. And then it would be one fixed reduction incentive, right?
Yes.
You wouldn't have different steps. Like if you do so many, you get this, or if you do more, you get this. It would be one fixed incentive reduction.
That's how we've seen it work the best in the past. The only caveat to that, as Blake was talking about, was tobacco. So we do have groups that do not participating in anything, tobacco users, and then tobacco users who do wellness, or people who participate in wellness, right? So there can be a couple caveats to that, but I agree with you, that can be relatively confusing and high maintenance to manage. So
Yeah.
we would definitely want to encourage you guys to do step 1 and step 2 kind of first year, and get everyone on board, get people involved, add in step 3 for our second year, and really start to kind of see how it works and the time and interest in it. Usually what we add on to the bottom of this, Mary Jo, is a descriptor that talks about, we do expect you to be honest. If we find out, we will be doing random checks on people who said they participated in things. We will be randomly checking different things. And if for some reason someone were to choose to lie about it and got a premium differential, it does have some language in there about what could possibly happen.
Sure.
Um,
I commend you guys. This is awesome. It's a great opportunity for the county and for employees. Thank you.
Sounds like this needs to be set up soon to get this rolling, so.
I will get, I'll do my next steps. I'll get the wellness ROI numbers for you guys, and I will get this customized so that you guys can use this moving forward when talking it through internally. And then again, we have a wellness director who will happily sit and help that person who's going to be kind of the super user on that committee to start out. He will absolutely work with them hand in hand to get a committee set up and get these first couple of years rolling. And then we'll always be available. He and I are always available to help moving forward.
Sounds great. Thank you
Okay.
very much. Was there any more questions from the committee? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Dan. I'm going to do my follow-up and I'll be in touch. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.
Okay, thank you.
We can move
Thanks.
on to John and the Veteran Service.
Good morning, everybody. Just talking about the budget request we have. I have the same concerns and major expenses as everybody else does. Of course, the primary portion of the budget belongs to the payroll. Conversely, with the issues going on with all the healthcare plans and the increases there, my office doesn't have any of our employees that are enrolled in the healthcare program, so our projected expenses there are zero. As it has been. Our budget move for next year, the major increases that we're looking at are primarily in travel, because there is the accreditation process that we have to go through to maintain our access to the VA databases and everything. We have the state conventions that we have to go to a minimum of once, if not twice a year. And then there's the national convention, which we are required to go to 3 out of every 5 years. Okay, so that's a polite way of saying you got to make it at least every other year unless there's some kind of an exception. This is one of those years, 2023 is one of the years that we have to go to the national convention. The national convention is going to be held in Madison this year. And so that's actually going to be a savings for us because that will replace the spring state conference, which normally would have taken place. So instead of having to go to 3 conferences next year, 2 state and the nationals, now we just have to go to the national and the state convention in the fall. But that will require an increase in the travel because of the registration fees for the national convention. Other than that, there was also just there was an increase in the care of graves, which is a accounting line that we have, which is required by state statute. It's a little bit nebulous in the amount that's actually required. It's broken down into 2 different categories. You've got flags and medallions, and then the cemetery/graves upkeep. The flags and medallions, we allotted $300 for, which is primarily to cover the expense of if we had an indigent that died in our county and there was no one to claim the remains, then the county becomes responsible for burying those remains. So I consulted with a couple of funeral homes around here and I asked them, what would be the cost of a burial, no major expense, just an average burial where we had an indigent that we had to take care of and have them buried. And they said it would be around $1,300. About $300 of that would be going toward the marker or medallion in this case. And the rest of it would be for the actual interment process. The state statute says that we need to set aside enough money to cover the expense of that burial. It doesn't tell us how much. It just says we have to set aside enough money. So based on talking to the funeral homes who said, if if it's averaging for a no major expense burial to be around $1,300, I budgeted $4,000 just in case it happened. All right. Now, in the history of Ashland County, we've never had that expense, but by statute, we have to have something allocated in case it does happen. So that pretty much sums up the budget. The only other thing that I would have to add, because I don't believe this has been presented to the finance committee or to any members of the county board in quite a few years, was the amount of money that our office brings in to the county through state and federal benefits that come to our veterans. And the data that I have comes from the various government accounting offices. I don't have copies to hand out to everybody. If you'd like copies to take a look at, I'd very happily give it to you, if you come down to our office after the board meeting to take a look at, or for those of you that are dialed in here, contact our office, give us a call, and I can email you the charts we have. But if we look at, again, this is just
Excuse
federal
me.
benefits. I'll talk
John,
about state. Yes.
Can you just give a copy to the clerk and she'll stick it on the website, this meeting,
Okay.
so everybody can see it on the,
Okay. Very briefly, then just to summarize that, with all of the areas that we look at in helping our veterans and the benefits that they collect through compensation, education benefits, insurance, medical care, that kind of stuff. For 2021, the federal government spent a little over $20 million on the veterans in Ashland County. And that was done primarily through the efforts of applications and assistance through our office. Okay, that happens every year. I've got data going back as far back as you want to go because it's government accounting office that does these reports every single year. And I mean, right in front of me here, I've got reports going back to 1982. And this is something where the amount goes up commensurate with increases in inflation and everything every single year. But for 2021, our office brought in a little over $20 million worth of federal benefits that came in directly to Ashland County. Now, in addition to that, with state benefits, I wasn't able to get the state report yet, which that also comes out. The primary benefit that comes back from the state is for veterans that are rated at 100% disabled, or if for some reason they are rated as being unemployable. either category of that, the veteran is able to get a refund in their state property tax. So they have to pay their state property tax up front, but then a refund check is issued to the veteran, back to the veteran. So that money that they pay comes right back to them. And again, that's money that just comes back into Ashland County. I don't have that, that amount available. I apologize. But just as an awareness, I just wanted to let the board and let the committee members be aware of that. So subject to any questions that you have, that's all I have.
Pat?
I want to ask the administrator, in the cover sheet for this agenda item, you had a note about the 90,000.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, that's made up of the first revenue item, the WDVA grant that typically has not been included as a revenue in the Veterans Department budget. So that money's just been building up in an account. In the packet, you'll see I included the state regulations in the Department of Veterans Administration. It shows that grant money is supposed to be used to pay John and Lori, or either one or both, however you want to do it. So, at some point, I think the county should consider moving that money back to the general fund, like we did with the sheriff's department and other departments in the highway department, because it really should reimburse the expenses the county has already incurred.
So John, I take it the two of you had a conversation on this?
No.
Or not? So this is from our consultants making that recommendation?
That's one of the recommendations.
Okay.
Again, it's grant money that's meant to pay John and Lori. So it really should be a revenue stream in the Veterans Department that's used to offset their expenses. And we just haven't been using that revenue stream for that purpose. And therefore the taxpayers have been paying for it, that $9,000 every year. And so the general fund should be reimbursed.
What is the total dollar amount of the account?
It's about 90 grand.
And John, is your idea that should go to the general fund?
No, by statute with that grant, that money has to go into a non-lapsing numbered account, which we maintain. And that money, because it's not to be used exclusively for wage enhancement, it's to be used for veteran benefit, but it can be used to help supplement wages. In the past, when that has been proposed, it was always denied. And so the money has been used for travel expenses, for different things that we have in the office to help offset our budget in other ways.
So, I'm sorry, Blake, did you have another question? So back to the administrator, is one way of doing this without knowing the red tape as much as the two of you, is one way of doing this is of saying, look, there's 90,000 in that line item that the vet's office has. Therefore, the county does not need to make as large a contribution towards wages in the coming year. They have money set aside that, among other things, can be used to pay some wages. So the county contribution to wages would be less, and they draw that down some.
Can I speak on that, Dan?
Well, I just on the screen, I have the Veterans Regulation 8.05.
Go ahead, John.
That's okay. You've got the statute right there. It can be used for wage supplementation. It's my understanding with the agreement that has to be signed every year by me and Dan. If it is to be used for wage supplement, that is not supposed to affect the standard amount that is taken from the budget. It would be in addition to. So if I wanted to use that money to hire an additional personnel if we needed help for something, or could we use it for Lori's and my salary? Yes, we could do that also, but it's not supposed to deduct from the budget of our office. It would be in addition to.
And we're not talking about deducting money from his office. His money hasn't been used in 10 years. So it
Right.
should go back to the general fund to reimburse for veterans office expenses that are allowable under the statute here. But that's a discussion I think we should have at another time, and everybody should think about it and look at the statute.
Yeah, it brings up a lot of questions in my mind. We can put that in a general fund and then pay their wages, and then that's pretty much all gone. So, and then if we have some kind of expense for them that needs to be taken out, then that has to come out in an additional. So it seems like a,
Right. That's why I said consider.
yeah. So I think that needs more discussion. Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much, John.
Thank you.
Next, we have land description.
Morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Oh. Brittany, it's a land description, sorry.
Land description is
Oh,
next.
Sorry, Jen.
It's
That's okay.
You're next. Go ahead, Jennifer.
All right. Good morning. I'm Jennifer Solberg, the real property lister for the county. So the main difference in my budget for this year as opposed to the previous year is health insurance. We had a change of staff. Our previous staff member had not taken health insurance. And the new staff member that we have now is taking health insurance. So that's why there's such a jump in the budget. Aside from that, some other, miscellaneous things were shaved off as much as possible. But as with, I think most departments, the majority of my budget, 94% of it is wages and salary. So. That's pretty much all that's new on the budget standpoint for my department. Pretty simple. I'll entertain any questions.
Any questions from the committee? I see Blake shaking his head no. Pat?
Well, just as a thought that, the number of people on the county insurance, if I remember, is like 135 now, it's down a little bit. But when we look at this department by department, especially really small departments like this, whether they're taking insurance or not is a big factor in the budget. It's nice that you point that out because that's, a big part of this. It'd almost be nice to strip out the insurance part from the budgets because, they're going to have insurance. And that way it's a little easier to look at the rest of it without that in there, just.
Yeah,
but it needs to be in the budget, but I don't really want to create another column, but.
Yeah, I mean, insurances could be what it is.
Yeah.
That's,
Because that, if someone might look at the budget and go, oh, why did theirs go up so much? And unless they're willing to dig into it, which isn't what happens all the time by any means, they might, come away with an impression that lacks understanding.
Ron, you have anything? Okay. Sounds like it's done deal. Thanks, Jennifer. Now, Brittany, you can go.
All right. Sorry about that, Jen. So I know you guys can hear me. So I just want to start off with the land records or the GIS department budget is unique. So I did have Heather add in my narrative letter yesterday. So if you didn't get a chance to see that, you can go on the website and look at the packet. It's there. But just a little recap. My department is mostly funded through grant money from the state of Wisconsin, which is called the Wisconsin Land Information Program and the grants. So that is a majority of my budget. And then a little bit of money comes in through retained fees from when people file real estate documents in the Register of Deeds office. So all of that is funneled into a non-lapsing account, which I maintain, and roughly there's about 6 to 7 grants a year that I'm working under and managing. So every 5 years, we participate in a very large project, which is the upfront cost of like $10,000 to get new imagery, which is kind of like when you go onto Google Maps and you look at the trees and the rivers and that kind of thing. So we're part of a consortium. We're actually at the, end of that kind of 3 to 4 years, we actually get 75% of that money back, and we only end up spending $30,000 of our own money towards that project with the reimbursements we get from, the tribe, some of our other federal partners. So that's a really good project, but it does mean that I need to hold on to quite a bit of money for that every 5-year cycle. So right now we're in a lull because we just purchased that in 2020 and had it flown. So the budget is going down a little bit. Last year, I budgeted 167, and then kind of depending on what we decide for a wage increase, it might be 155 to 160,000 for next year's budget. So I don't have any major projects coming on, just kind of our standard every year grant projects. So like I said, the budget's a little bit lower this year. So let me know if you have any questions.
Anyone have any questions on the committee? Pat?
Just out of curiosity, do the grant changes the amount, do they reflect what goes on with inflation on a fairly consistent level?
They actually kind of follow that real estate transaction. So right now our grants are a little bit less, but because real estate transactions have been a little bit more, it's still kind of offsetting itself. So it doesn't necessarily follow inflation, but more real estate recordings.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Register of Deeds.
Good morning. I'm Julie Gleason. I'm the register. There is a slight increase in our budget due to in health insurance. We share Jen's new position person. She comes in our office to cover when either my deputy or myself are gone. And so that's 30% of her health insurance costs. So is there any other questions?
Again, this is a department that is pretty much the same as this year, other than wages and benefits.
Correct.
Blake, anything? All right. You guys seem to be doing a really good job. We'll just call it that, right? Next is our treasurer's office.
Hi, I'm Tracy Hoagland. My increase also pretty much stayed the same except for health insurance and wages. Part of the health insurance is Krisha is getting married, so next year she will be a family plan because her husband will be added. Other than that, all my stuff is statutory. I can't make a whole lot of changes except for what Dan changes on the shared revenues, the stuff that comes in from the state, which sales taxes all fluctuate depending on where we're at. Tilt, all that they're all guesstimates. MFL is all guesstimates. Investments, obviously the rates are all dropping, so it's all a guesstimate. Other than that, do you have any questions?
Well, I want to point out the levy amount is completely a guess because we know that our net new construction went up 0.69%. So we'll be getting that extra revenue. But until we do the county levy form, we won't know exactly what the levy can be. And that doesn't come out till the middle of September. And even then we have to guesstimate because based on how much we're going to borrow.
You have something, Blake?
Yeah, can you go back to the previous, the insurance was fairly high for this group. So I guess, Tracy, I just have one question. Do you think incentivizing employees to have them take their spouse's insurance would be something that would take effect in some employees? I'm just questioning if that's been thought through, or have you ever had that propose to any of you or your employees as we think about that, or do you think they'd do that?
I guess I don't understand your question.
Like, that's something I was gonna be bringing up at the next executive committee meeting.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Because I
so-
see that the insurance is high in relation to wages for health
Right.
insurance. And I just
Right.
wanted,
Yeah, I could tell you my previous employer, gave employees a $4,200 a year bonus if they went on to their spouse's insurance plan. So, that's something to consider. I will say that, when we do that, our other employers will be doing the same thing. And so if we want to do that, we have to make the number high enough that they actually see a benefit on going on the other insurance plan. And of course, that would represent a net cost savings then.
Can I speak on that? Your predecessor did talk about that at the county. That was discussed, trying to provide incentive payments. And I don't know if there was ever a survey done in the past, but he strongly felt that employees would not make a switch. And I know, like, for me personally, I've carried my family health insurance for over 20 years, and every employer my husband has ever had has paid him to not take their company's plan. So I know that employers do offer this. And it was something that Clark Schroeder had investigated a little bit here and did not feel that it would be that there would not be enough employees that would take that benefit versus the number of employees that currently do not have health insurance through the county. So if you were going to incentivize employees to no longer take county health insurance, would you also have to offer that payment to employees that currently do not have the health insurance? And then you would be, okay. I see head shaking no, but I know that the previous administrator did consider that. Whether you guys want to consider it or not, it'd be an opportunity maybe for cost savings, but he didn't feel that it would benefit the county.
I've kicked this idea up a couple of times, so it's just another tool in the toolbox. Pat, do you have something?
For clarification, does the county require that a person take the insurance or provide proof they have insurance with someone else?
We don't require you to take insurance. However, the Affordable Care Act requires people to have, adequate coverage. So they have to get it through their employer, their spouse's employer, the Affordable Care Act. I mean, yeah, there's no penalty anymore, but if there's still a legal requirement that you have coverage.
Okay, is there any more questions for Tracy? Okay, cool. You're
Thank you.
released.
Thank you.
Next is the county clerk.
Hi, this is Heather, the county clerk. My increases for the budget for 2023 basically are in wages, health insurance, and also workers' comp, which Dave Martinson came and talked to the committee at the last finance and discussed that. So I do have a decrease in my elections as there's only 2 elections, proposed 2 elections next year as we had 4 this year. So that's all I have.
Any committee questions?
I don't want to comment, there is an increase for travel. I don't know how to put this without, we all know the issue with elections in the state. And it's important that our county clerk keep up to date on all the changes in election law and court decisions and what have you. So Ashland County does not end up on CNN or Fox News. So we did increase her budget to go to WCA conferences and training stuff and training events. And so.
Okay. Any questions, Pat?
There's nothing in the postage line.
No, there's a separate postage.
Okay.
Mr. Kinney, it's right here on the screen.
Oh, okay. But why not put it in the line up there?
It's a standard, it was a standard form that everybody got. So it was because hers has different portions, she just split it out differently.
Can I make a comment on it? I just wanted to say that I am next year not mailing out receipts for the July collections because of the cost of postage, because of the cost of paper, because of the cost of cartridges and stamps. So that should be quite a savings, but that doesn't reflect in my budget. Obviously, well, I don't even think Heather knows that, but I'm just stating that it could be a savings of like $2,000 if it goes like I'm saying, hopefully.
It's good.
Because
It's
I
nice
I
to
don't
find
have that in my
innovations.
budget, so you're not
Yeah.
gonna see it. So,
It's nice to find innovations like that in cost saving ways. Thank you for doing that.
yes, you're welcome.
And postage is going up if I'm not mistaken. So
Which
is
is
that
good,
reflected
yeah.
in budgets?
We'll see that
Countywide?
postage is separate, so it's not in mine because I don't have a postage
Yeah, the
line. but
postage,
I
I
don't-
think is going up in December or whatever sometime, yeah.
Yeah, and I know this might be a time to bring this part up too. I did send everybody out an email a couple days ago about debt levy. We got an opinion from the counties association confirming that property and liability insurance is eligible for debt levy. So if we want to, we can take this $215,000 for property and liability out of the regular levy and put it on debt levy. So that's one of the tools we have of making sure the county has more money for general operations. The other thing we're clarifying on that portion is court orders. The statute pretty much says court orders, and that's it. The plain reading of the word language says you can do all court orders. And there is precedent in the court system for that. So I am asking HHS to get us a dollar amount of all the court orders we've had this year. And that is another opportunity for us to save money on the general levy and put it on debt levy. Does it help the taxpayer? No. The taxpayer is still paying for it either way, but it does give the county more flexibility in operations. So it's something for you guys. If you haven't read it yet, I'd encourage you to read it. We are asking for more clarification on the court order portion, but it's pretty clear that this $215,000 can be paid for with debt levy instead of general levy. And that's an issue for everybody to consider.
Any other questions for the committee for the, where are we, county clerk?
I just want to clarify workers' comp. Is that number set in stone, that 190?
No, the actual number doesn't come out until October-ish.
Okay. Because it's pretty high and that's driving the most of the total increase in expense. And I think Dave talked well about that and that could come down.
Well, that's driven by, well, I guess in order to discuss what that's driven by, would need to be in closed session because it's.
Okay, that's fine. No, I just was curious if that was fixed or not, but if it's still not totally final.
It's the insurance, it's Dave Martinson's best guess at this point.
Okay,
The number, our ratio is fixed by the state. It's set, I mean, everybody pays the same workers' comp in the state. Depending on what your rating is, you know, we had what was it, a little less than 0.7 for years. And now we're going to be at 1.1. So that's literally almost a doubling of our rates, just based on our experience factor. But like I said, there's very specific instances as to why workers' comp is going up that we can discuss in the next meeting in closed session. But I
We
don't
can
feel
do that.
comfortable at talking about very specific instances in open session.
No, we can move on to do that. Was there any other questions, Blake? Ron, Pat? Okay. Thank you very much, Heather. And moving on to county clerk. Oops, sorry, I didn't check you off. Clerk of courts. Getting through all my clerks.
I'm going to handle this one. Sandy has to be in court today. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to get the screen shared here. Her budget is essentially the same as this year too. There's no increases anywhere and except for wages and benefits, which we still have to wait for. So she's coming in pretty much the same. And most of her expenses are required by the state. And some of them are variable because we don't know what's going to happen in the court system next year. This next week, we have a high profile court case that's going to cost a lot of money. I mean, if they decide to send the jury home, I mean, it's going to cost us $5,000 for nothing. And that's an expense we have to pay. And so, I don't know. It's all required stuff.
Fun. Anyways. No one have questions for Dan because he has no answers? Ah, Pat does. Go ahead, go for it.
For Sandy Pidle, last year in budget season, we agreed to pay $5,000 for
Mhm.
that position, and I'm trying to remember if that was a longer commitment than 1 year. Or if this is something we can adjust.
Pretty certain it was from.
You can adjust it if you want, but I can tell you the reality of the fact is that she'll turn down being registered and probate if. And
No, I wasn't suggesting going down. We agreed to pay 5,000, but I don't see a wage increase for that.
Oh, no, there's no wage increase for that. She's agreed to stay at the 5,000 for that.
And forego a wage increase.
Yeah, because her general wage is already set by ordinance.
Yeah.
And for
And
this part, she's agreed to stay at 5,000.
Yeah. yeah, so she'll be and so we're keeping it there because again, she won't do the job if she isn't compensated for it. And it would cost us a lot more money if we had to hire a register and probate.
Well, my thought was, in fairness, that that 5,000 would be adjusted at whatever we give the other employees.
You're certainly free to do that. This is just what she submitted, so.
Yeah, I think because part of what happens is over time, I mean, it's very kind and generous of her to stay at the 5,000, but I think over in time, in fairness for her, that should be adjusted at the same rate that other employees are getting. I just think it's a fair thing to do, even though she offered to stay at the 5,000. I think it's the ethical thing to do.
Well, if it's
Well,
the general consensus of the committee, I'm happy to make the adjustment and, you can debate their item further in the next round.
Go ahead.
If I can, I'll make
Yeah.
a motion that we adjust the Sandy Pidle's rate for next year to reflect the same rate of increase that the other employees are going to get.
Can you amend that to say register and probate?
The
Because her
register of
clerk of court's
probate-
position
The
is
register
set.
probate position for Sandy Pidle to adjust the wages, the 5,000 there, consistent with what other employees get next year.
Ron
Stender will second that.
Okay, I have a first by Pat and a second by Ron. Any more discussion? All right, we'll move on to, did you have another?
For Blake, who was new, I think you weren't here last year when we did this. Sandy agreed to do that at 5,000, and if she hadn't agreed to do that, we would be hiring a full-time person by the order of the judge, is my understanding. So we want to keep this relationship working. We have a strong financial incentive to make it work.
No, I totally understand. And I guess my question would be is long-term when Sandy's at the point of, retiring, which we don't want, we're gonna see a big influx in expense here, which I'm not excited about because that'll likely happen but take advantage, I guess, if we can, but let's compensate her correctly.
Any more? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay. We can move on to forestry.
Good morning from down in Butternut.
other than the wage and benefit thing, which everybody is dealing with, our budget stayed fairly consistent from last year. I did trend the timber revenue estimate down $50,000 to 575, based on where the industry's at right now and what we're seeing for market share, and what's going on. I did add $500 for fuel. And we did eliminate a contracted position that was doing the snowmobile trail maintenance inspections and reviews. That was just over $16,000. And then we added that back in, down at the bottom under where it says snowmobiles, of $15,000 to help the Snowmobile Alliance, as they transition into their new structure. And that'll be expenses submitted by the Alliance and reviewed by the Forestry Committee. Other than that, the budget stayed the same. There's no changes.
The other thing is we did not include the carbon credit money because we're not sure if we're going to get the money in 23 or 24. So instead of banking on it in 23, we just didn't include it in the budget. If we get the money at the end of 23, the county board can decide what to do with it at that point, or whether to include it in the 24 budget. I don't know, Mr. Stender, do you want to talk about snowmobiles real quick? Why the 15 grand isn't there?
Your mic, your
Microphone.
mic.
We're doing away with a position that was the trail boss, and which was funded through forestry, and just having that money put back into the forestry budget or snowmobile budget for the Alliance.
And this is going on with a general restructuring of the Alliance to keep everybody in the county happy.
Good luck with that.
I think it'll work.
Sir, any other questions from anybody on the committee? You have anything, Pat?
I can't help but see there's a number for postage here, but let's move on.
All right. Anyways, thank you. And we can move on to zoning.
So I'm Bruce Blakeman. I'm contracting with the county for zoning. And it looked like our budget is pretty close to the same as last year. I'm pretty new to this, so maybe Dan could help out with any questions.
I think the revenue numbers are going to change. They're going to go up. So we're still working on that. Other than that, I mean, there is a cost savings with Bruce over our previous zoning administrator. And I will say thank you, Bruce. He's doing an incredible job.
You're welcome.
And thank you, Carisha, for taking care of this meeting today. Carisha hours have changed a little bit. She's going to be working with land conservation next year, helping out with some of the accounting there, the accounts receivables, payables, and also helping Mary Jo with her grant accounting. She'll be working from here, this building, so customers will still be able to talk to somebody in the office. She'll still be helping Tracy when Tracy needs it. But hopefully, this gives Carisha much greater skills and helps her grow as a person and an employee, and helps out both Mary Jo and Tracy, who both need it. So that's why you'll see a slight decrease in zoning. And hopefully we're trying to make it more efficient. We will be looking in zoning about changing the rules to make people on the island pay for the ferry when they go over. Have that stuck as an ordinance. So that will be an increased revenue we'll see. And Bruce has a couple of other ideas about revenue increases that he'd like to run by the committee. So I think we'll see higher revenues coming in.
So in the past, the ferry fee, we just picked it up. It was a cost to the county. And we had mentioned it to Dan, because especially now the prices keeps going up with that ferry fee. So
This affects our department too. So we just pay for the ferry. So are you suggesting that we would not have to pay for the ferry anymore?
We're suggesting that the customer who needs the zoning work would pay for the ferry.
correct. And we've
Okay.
been talking to the plumbers and they're good with that, that they just tack it right onto their price. Any sanitary systems on the island.
Perfect. If this passes, let me know, because this would also affect all of the site visits that we do on the island.
Right. And to make it easy as of right now, just because I'm a contracted agent, I pay my own fee when I'm there and then I just turn around and I can bill the county or the plumber. Until we get something set up
Go
officially.
ahead, Pat.
You're not asking for a motion on that,
Oh, that's gonna come out of zoning.
but and what about Mary Jo's department?
That'll come out of land conservation too.
Is that something you're going to change then?
Well, she just heard about it, so now she wants to think about it.
Yeah, I have just always assumed that cost into our department. But I've thought that this is something that we technically should be charging landowners, because every time I go over there, it's $50. And if I bring a technical staff person along, then we're adding another $17 on top of that. And at this point, we're only doing 3 or 4 of these a year, but we're getting more and more calls at this point. And with the Lake Superior high water levels and erosion, there's more and more erosion challenges happening on the island, which I anticipate is going to trigger continued increases in site visit requests. So right now we're talking $150, but that's something that we don't necessarily budget for. I just pay for it out of like an education account or a travel account that happens to have money in it. But as the prices of the ferry increase and we get increases in requested assistance, I've been thinking about this in my mind. Is this something we should actually be charging landowners for?
Yeah, if they want to live there.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'll look for a motion out of both committees to do this, and
Yeah.
we'll bring it back to finance committee, no matter what decision those committees make for you. So,
I guess I would just encourage, if there is an ordinance that is proposed,
Can we
make it
handle
a-
this in the committees and then bring it back? Because we're trying to get through
general,
these
okay.
budgets.
no, that's just something for you to be aware of, that there's
Yeah.
gonna be more revenues in this department.
Cool. Administrator.
It hasn't changed, other than pay raises. I included, sorry, I'm going back and forth here between these things. There it is. Okay, enable editing, share screen. The only changes are wages and the budget and benefits. I included a couple options, which we'll be doing for the sheriff's department too, is I'm under contract, so my wage increase is set by contract. County board, of course, able to change it, make it more if they want. So I included 2 separate options for you guys to consider, and I'm happy either way because I signed the deal. So, but I'm going to do the same thing for sheriff next meeting because the deputies are under contract also. So if the county board wants to change it, they can. The deputies certainly won't mind. But I'm going to give you the 2 options for you to decide. Next meeting we'll have the courthouse in there, and hopefully we'll actually have some news. We have an architect and structural engineer coming here any minute now to look at this building in 514. So that's why we haven't done this building, the actual courthouse building yet.
That's fine.
So, but hopefully we'll have news for you on that soon.
Any committee questions for the administrator? See Blake shaking his head no. All right, last wild card. Patty, you have any questions? All right. County board budget.
It's pretty much the same. The one thing we should note is that Lori Schmidt is split between the county board and the administrator's office. Why isn't this keep doing that to me?
Technology is fun.
Yeah, so obviously there's no revenue for the county board. So we kept it pretty much the same. The only difference again is Lori's wages and how we and benefits and what those numbers come in at the end. Other than that, we kept everything the same.
Even though we're sending more people to the WCA and stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, I still think it's going to end up being about the same. I
That's
mean,
just
we
all
could say,
lumped into travel then.
well, we could certainly increase that budget. Because I would encourage more supervisors to go to these things, and there's a great opportunity to learn. But I'm guessing that's an executive committee question.
Okay. Any questions from the committee? Blake shaking his head again. Thanks for popping back on. Pat, you have anything? No. Okay. And then UW Extension.
Hi. Last but not least, I'm Mary Pardee. I am the Area Extension Director. I work across Ashland, Bayfield, Douglas, and Iron counties. The county generously supports extension to the tune of about 170 grand. So you can see here I did a couple options with the wage increases. And then option 3 is there's a narrative about that, about moving our support staff to be a UW position, still paid for, however, by the county on our contract. So a little bit about extension, if you don't know, the county pays a co-fund fee for our educators, and that's like 3.5 people, full-time equivalency. And then we also have another 3+ that have no county funds that go into it, that are totally funded through state and or federal grants. So it's about 7 people total in the extension office for the 156,118 that I'm requesting for on the peach column at the end there. And that is about 25% of our overall total budget. So the rest comes from state and federal dollars. So basically keeping it the same. We've been pretty static for several years. Does anybody have any questions?
Anything, Blake?
So can I just, the option 3, Blake to UW, that what exactly can you just, I'm sorry, I don't quite follow.
Yep, no, that's fine. So not you, Blake. So the one person in our office that is totally county funded is our office support staff. So historically, counties have provided office support to extension offices, which over the years, of course, as as budgets get cut, dwindle down. And so we are at 1 full-time office staff right now, which is great. And then I have a proposal, and there was a narrative included in there to move her to a UW position. So it would be a university staff position. And we are kind of doing that. We're starting to do that across the state. So in our area up here, she would be the first one to make that transition. But what that does is puts her on the same system as the rest of us. So right now, because they're county employees, they don't have access to all the same software that the educators do. So that can make it difficult to do some of the support work. So that would be one of the, from my perspective, one of the biggest things and the biggest advantage to having her on the state payroll would be access to the same types of software that the rest of us do. She would also have a little bit more of a comparative salary for the work that she performs, which is the same work as other support staff and extension offices. In our area, she is by far the lowest paid office support staff for the same work that the others do. And then it would be also advantageous to me because I'm her supervisor. So I'm a state employee supervising a county employee, which, as you can imagine, can be a little awkward at times. So then it would be me supervising another state employee, which is beneficial for us too. In terms of the county, one of the things that Dan had pointed out about this is taking her off of county insurance and putting her onto state insurance, then transfers that risk to the state. Does that help? We're kind of a complicated organization.
I had some understanding, but this is great that you put it in perspective. And it seems like you're in favor, or at least wanting us to consider that option.
Yeah, definitely. So I put together preliminary numbers. So before we make that final decision, I need to finish consulting with our finance department and extension to make sure that the final number was correct. And a lot of that, you guys are talking about health insurance too, and how much that is going to cost. That's probably the iffy one here too, in terms of putting her on state health insurance, like what's that cost right now too. So like anything, the longer you wait to get those final numbers, the better.
Pat?
Blake, I'm on the Ag and Extension Committee, and we supported this unanimously, and it makes sense for a lot of reasons that were mentioned. And for Mary Jo, or not Mary Jo,
Just Mary.
The same software is I think is a really important thing, because I know from my work experience, if people are in different systems, it just is so inefficient. And so for them all to be on the same software access, it makes that work environment much more efficient. But I also think very importantly, it gives us a much better chance of retaining a good employee, because a year ago or 2 years ago, trying to fill that position dragged out for like 6 months or so before that happened. So we should keep a good person longer this way.
Yeah, when we finally filled it, she left after like 4 months for a better position. I don't know, better, higher paying, I should say. And so our current employee has been in place for a year now and is doing really well. So I've also looked into, because one of the things that our extension committee had asked about is, can I do that? Can I move her directly into a position without having to go through a hiring process? And so I did check into that, and yes, I am able to do that.
Any other questions from the committee? I appreciate the narrative. I appreciate all the explanation and the work on this, Mary. You're always very good with all the paperwork to follow everything up. So, and I appreciate this option to not only keep your staff person solid, but to help us in fixing some of our fiscal needs. Okay, we are down to discuss action, community contributions.
Mr. Kinney?
Yes. And if I may, before Tracy, Mary Jo, Carisha leave, I want to say thank you for working together to figure out some details of sharing that. I know that sort of stuff is never easy from my work experience. It serves the county well, and as the administrator said, Carisha, you're really going to benefit from that. What you're going to learn, you're going to be more valuable. So I know that all of that couldn't have been easy, but thank you folks for doing that. Community contributions, the one I would like to delve into some in particular is our contribution to the ADC. And in particular for economic development. It occurs to me that as a committee, we're the Finance and Economic Development Committee, and we really don't give any guidelines on what we want to see for economic development. The contribution for economic development, somewhere around 8-9 years ago, the county board changed it from a contribution to the ADC to economic development, and anybody or organization that wanted to do economic development in Ashland County could apply for some of that funding. And so I asked the administrator recently, was that a typo or, inadvertently changed back the ADC, or did the board approve that? So it's really economic development and others can apply for it. And I think this committee has some responsibility, because it's part of what we're supposed to do, to give some guidance on economic development, whether that's housing or business development of some type, et cetera. And we really haven't done that. And I also, my personal feeling at least is, I don't understand what that $35,000 a year is 50, but it was 35, what we're getting for that. And I know some of what we get for that, but I'm also aware that the ADC is a nonprofit. They say what they do is support economic development. That's, part of what they, is in their documents is for tax purposes. But they get rent from that building. They support economic development with, money that they generate from that and other contributions. But to me, it's in no way clear what the county is getting for what it contributes. We haven't said what we want the focus on for economic development. We don't get reports that speak to how we can point to what those county contributions are doing for the county. And I think that's something that we, as a committee, need to look at. So, and I'm not saying the ADC doesn't do some good things. I just, if someone asks me, why are we giving money to the ADC and what are we getting? I think, what are we getting? I think that's a hard thing to answer. And when I say, what is the county getting? We need to distinguish what the county gets above what the ADC would otherwise do without those contributions. I think there's some pressing economic needs in this area. And one of the thoughts that I really have gravitated towards from things I've read is so many places it comes down to housing. And we all know we're lacking good quality housing in the city and in the county and in the region. And as I read these stories on economic development, housing seems to be this underlying foundation to what you need to support good economic development. And I know the city is doing some out by Walmart, but as a county, especially, Mellon and further south, there's a lack of good housing there. Bad River has a lack of good housing. The city certainly has a lack of, quality housing. We got lots of, lower end rental stuff, but we don't have enough, quality housing to attract people and keep them living within the city limits. They go outside the city limits. They move to Bayfield County. So, we should have some things that we point to that they work on. There's grants to support some of what we might want to get done. So I'd like to see us more engaged on that.
Well, it's not just AADC then either. It's also the Northwest Regional Planning Commission is the one that actually has been doing some of the stuff with housing. There was a survey that was done in like a 3-county region to see if we could cooperate on different developments. So that is if you want to know about housing, that piece goes that way. I see AADC as doing more small business development and support services for them. We've got ourselves piece and parceled out to different places because we as a county do not have an economic development department or what other counties have. So when we look at this, we need to look at it in the big picture and see as a big scheme of things, what everything is, what pieces are coming from where. Because it's not just, I don't see AADC just as our be all to end all. I see us as more spread out. So, and we probably do need more of that because sometimes I kind of laugh when we have economic development in our title for our committee because we don't do enough for that. So having some more discussions, pulling in the pieces that we do have funds that we set out to, because I mean, I guess you could even count the $500 for the railroad guy as part of that too, because I've talked to Watco about trying to put a transfer station in down at Mellon so we could get something rolling in the tracks that they have. But that's just because I did it. It's not because the $500 came back and said, oh, we're doing this magic. So far, it's been me poking into it. So yeah, we do definitely need to be a little more aggressive on this part.
Yeah, thank you for that. And so I think we should set some priorities and housing may, be on that list if, not high on that list. You mentioned Northwest Regional Planning. We give a bit under 12,000, I think, to them right now. And one of the things is my understanding is because the city and the county have made contributions to the ADC, more properly, it should be for the county economic development. Northwest Regional Planning has tried not to step on the toes in the city of Ashland here. So if we want to work with Northwest Regional Planning, we really need to reach out to them. And so we put, most of 12,000 into them. And to a large extent, I think we get not a lot of bang for that buck because we sort of push them away politically with the city in particular, I could tell you, because they want to steer business to the ADC. So certainly the Northwest Regional Planning, there's opportunities there to work with them more closely to support things such as the housing, but certainly lots of other things. And I think we should look at Northwest Regional Planning. And there's, other avenues too, but we just haven't engaged it as a committee with that at all. We write a check and
And it's out there in the world, just doing
yeah,
whatever
and
it does. Yeah.
and the housing would add to tax base. It would keep more people hopefully living within the city limits. We know people move to Bayfield County in part because of lower taxes, all things being equal. And so it would be a good long-term investment to build that tax base through housing for lots of reasons and thus the whole economy. But developing good housing stock is a long-term project. So it takes people working on it. And I think it takes elected bodies being committed to that because it's going to take a number of years. So I'd like us to start with, something like that.
We should bring all the different places that we have money out into those, that arena and bring it all in and have a good discussion with all of them. Dan?
Okay, I was going to talk about some of these later in the agenda, but since we're talking about them now. One, housing. Okay, WIDA has designated the Chequamegon Bay area for a pilot program to build workforce housing. So we are working with Bayfield County and the tribe on doing that, and that program is just getting started now. The state sponsored program, so we're obviously running on their time schedule. I started working with the tribe on building another affordable housing complex on the reservation.
Bad River Tribe?
Yeah, Bad River. Building another affordable housing complex on a reservation, on Bad River owned land. Whether it's actually on the reservation or not, I don't know yet. But we've gone so far as to talk to a developer who specializes in building these projects using WIDA credits. So that's ongoing now. Laura, you mentioned rail. I did get notification from the Office of Railroad Commissioner that there's a request to look at the safety, like the gates, the lights, all that stuff, to make sure that they're adequate for use in transit. So it does seem as if Waco is looking to reopen the line up to Mellon.
Yeah, we could do, I know they could use support to get funding because there is, I have in my notes at home, there is funding to redo the rail if it does need upgrades, especially in the part that hasn't been used,
Right.
but also to rebuild through like up into Ashland and.
Right, the infrastructure
Right.
money. Yeah, and then there's another, and speaking of community partners, the Chamber of Commerce here has been working with the town of Jacobs to help increase tourism there. One, they want to do more ATV and snowmobiles, but they're also looking to set up a TIF district down there to get in more businesses. So Chamber of Commerce is working with them on that. So she's actually working around the county. So there are a lot of development things happening. And I'm also hoping our new snowmobile alliance will increase business down south also. So there's a lot of things moving. It just seems slow, but a lot of pieces coming together.
Go ahead.
On the housing aspect, is there anything that the county would need to do or contribute to make any of this move forward?
That's unknown at this point. The project with Bad River, they would, it's their land, so they would give the land for the project. And the developer would raise the money in the private markets with WIDA credits. This would be affordable housing, workforce housing, so it would be open to everyone because it's under federal rules. It's kind of like food banks. Doesn't matter where it is, it's federally funded. Everybody has access to it. Would it be taxable? Probably not. That's not really our concern. Our broader concern is there's not enough housing and our employers can't hire enough people. And we certainly can't get new employers if there's no housing. So, so for the small loss of the property tax on that parcel, we gain a whole bunch in development and helping our business community out. The county would be part of something to do with the WIDA program, the Schwamigan Bay pilot project. However, that's just starting, so I don't know exactly what our contribution would be at this point. And my guess is a lot of it, my guess it would be us and Bayfield County and the municipalities contributing money to purchase land. And then a private developer would come in and build it using WIDA credits and private financing, or maybe some state financing. And we may have to approve a TIF district to do some of this stuff. And
I think on future agendas, we need to have economic development and any updates on it as a static point on there. Because like I said, up until now where this got brought up, or we're talking about small contributions we make, this doesn't really get talked about. So it's
Right.
best to have that a continual update. That way the board is also made aware of what
Right.
is going on too. So
in all
there's no
honesty,
more
most of this stuff
confusion.
came up in the last couple months too.
Well,
Can I just ask one question?
Yeah.
How does renewable energy fit into? Because we haven't talked at all about it. Bayfield, I read an article that one of the best counties as far as, in Wisconsin, as far as trying to go renewable. I haven't heard much at all about Ashland County.
No.
And, so how does that fit in? Maybe I'm totally off base if that's finance and economic. Where's that coming from?
Well, it is finance economic and that, Excel Energy is going to be putting in 3, I think, utility charging, car charging stations in the city of Ashland. So there'll probably be one down by the Quick Trip on the east end and one somewhere right here around the courthouse and one by the Quick Trip on the west end. And Excel Energy is going to be doing that. And, this building already has solar panels on it. And it has for, I don't know how many years. There's a lot of money, there's going to be a lot of money coming forth in the new reconciliation bill to help us do that stuff. The large part of the reason is Bayfield County has more money than we do. They can do more.
I think I get that part of it, but I mean, from a long-term planning, this is the first time I've even heard that this is part of an economic development. I thought this was just finance committee. So I'm glad that we're actually doing this and talking about this because this is near and dear to my heart.
Right.
For the future of Ashland, right? And the county. But to be honest, renewable energy should be a line item to see how we can, and I know you guys may be like, hey, Blake, you're going too far with this. My generation and the younger people are very, very excited about renewable energy. And I'm not saying you guys aren't as well and older people aren't, but so this is very important to me. Putting a couple charging stations and having, like we have to have some planning around it, like talking about it. Like that's all I'm trying to say. So,
Right.
I would be I put myself at the front if you're looking for someone to be involved with renewable energy discussions. I
Right.
think that-
Well, in the charging station aspect, that's going to be a city of Ashland issue because it's part of their planning and zoning. And we don't have any control over that. Part of the problem with renewable energy is energy in general is governed by state statute and by the state. A good example is the Enbridge pipeline. We don't get any taxes off of that. The state gets all the taxes. So the state controls whether or not you can put windmills in, or whether you can set up a solar farm or what have you. So much of this stuff is still has to be hashed out by the state legislature on what we can and can't do. I expect that's going to be an issue that comes up because again, all the money, federal money coming in, both through the infrastructure bill and the reconciliation bill that passed last week. But until the state legislature does that, we're kind of limited in what we can do.
And
We can retrofit county buildings.
It's a PPLE issue.
Yeah.
Because that's where the other solar projects were underneath was just before I got on public property and law enforcement, looking at different buildings to put solar panels on and try to help, whatever little we could to shift over to new renewable energy. So
Right.
anytime you want to come to another committee meeting,
Well, yeah, and the county could offer grants to private businesses to help offset the cost of renewable energy. But right now, the state doesn't really give us much of a mechanism to do so. And we'd have to come up with the money to do that too. So hopefully we'll find out more as the federal stuff unfolds. But right now, I'm not sure anybody really knows how much is in there at this point.
Pat,
So Blake, over in Bayfield County, there's a person named, I believe his name is Bill Bailey. It might be Mike Bailey, but I think it's Bill Bailey. He's been really active in this and they do an annual tour, I believe, each fall of some different projects with alternate energy. So I think that's one reason Bayfield County has got more is because of one person in particular. But if we wanted to, perhaps we invite that person to a meeting and we do an assessment of what the county has and see what opportunities he might see for us that we otherwise might be missing. And then with the infrastructure money, maybe this is an opportunity to tap into something that we might otherwise miss.
and again, I would think that would start in PPLE with that
Yeah.
presentation and then come to here as he's got some kind of idea for projects for us.
Right.
Um,
I mean, there's different opportunities out there.
Pretty certain Focus on Energy was one of the partners we were working with before.
Right. When I was in Allegheny County, I was trying to get the county to invest in using methane from the county landfill to put that back into the system and generate income off of it. They've since done that, just actually coming online now. But there are a whole bunch of different projects like that we could work on that help both our community members and help them have better their own personal economics better and help green energy. Again, we'll have to wait and see what comes out and with the federal money. But there's a bunch of stuff that.
This is Mike. Bill Bailey helped Better River Tribe get their $1 million grant out here, and money
I'm
is
sorry, who's
available.
speaking right now?
Mike.
Oh,
Mike.
I'm sorry, Mike. Sorry.
Yeah, Pat is correct that Bill Bailey's contact over in Beagle County. He helped the Bedouin tribe secure the grant that they have for their $2 million solar panels that they have out here on the reservation. And he's a really nice guy to work with, knowledgeable, down to earth. He has a connection with Bayfield Electric over there. Like I say, he worked with the tribe and securing the grant that we did get. So he's the contact. Yeah, if we want to bring it up, he'd be more than willing to come to a meeting and do a pitch. And I can't say enough. He's so down to earth. He explains it in lay terms and stuff like that. So Pat's right on the target there. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any more on this topic? Okay. Seeing in none, but making sure that we talk about this on every agenda, please. Next is our investment update.
It's pretty standard, speaks for itself. Where are we?
How close are we to the budgeted versus actual?
We are so close. I can't. Laura, as soon as we get it actually ready, you'll be the first one I call.
Good.
So,
anybody have a question on the investments? Pat?
We've got some CDs at 2.5%. The Northern State Bank loaned us money at 2.5%. I think we should thank Northern State Banks for being so good to us on that loan. So,
I was just talking to Supervisor Ellison about that the other day. And, I think it's largely because we keep a large amount of money in the bank and have a long-term relationship with them. But yes, they are generous with us.
The bank did say that the rates are starting to go up. It's just we're not reflecting it yet. Potentially will hopefully show next year. So, but no, I agree. I agree with your comment.
Any other questions from the committee? Next is our sales tax report.
It doesn't look like that was uploaded. Sales tax is up about 30,000 from this time last year.
We can get that added to the
Yeah.
packet too.
Yeah.
Any questions on something we can't see? All right. Verbal administrator updates.
Okay, I went over a bunch of the stuff already. So I got the one more issue. I sent the entire county board the Sanborn decision. The Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals ruled in favor of the tribe. Where we go from here, I don't know. I have no idea if the state's going to appeal the decision or not. If they do, they would appeal it on bank first, which means the entire Seventh Circuit hears it. And there's a statutory time limit for them to make that decision to appeal and for the appeals court to hear the decision. There's no limit on when the court can give their final decision. Or the state could appeal directly to the U.S. Supreme Court. Generally, from what I've been hearing, it's likely not to be heard by the appeals court or the Supreme Court. So we are where we are. I don't know where we're going. We have to wait for direction from the Department of Revenue at this point. I do know it's going to create a mess in the town of Sanborn. So I don't know what's going to happen there. There is a state statute out there. Should point out, since this whole thing started, the county has in good faith paid out almost $2 million to the school district, town of Sanborn, and the tech school, while not collecting any of our own taxes. With this decision, we're not going to be, our taxes are gone. We're never going to get them. There is a part of state statute 70.74 that states we can go back to the other jurisdictions and collect the money for them. So those other jurisdictions technically owe us that $2 million. I don't know how they're going to pay it. I don't know how the town of Sanborn's going to pay it because I have a feeling it's going to dissolve. I have a feeling there's going to be requests, lots of requests from owners who are not tribal members to annex into other communities. So I don't know how that's going to fall out. We're going to have to wait for the DOR to tell us something. And I'm not sure there's, yeah, Mike's on the phone. I'm not sure the tribe even knows how it's going to play out yet. They're sort of waiting for an appeals decision too. Am I correct? It's not. Anyhow, I think they're waiting too, because they don't know how it's going to play out either. So it's going to be messy. That's all I can promise.
So we're looking at whatever we had paid out for school taxes or whatever, we wouldn't get that back.
No, we're going to get that back. Let me pull up the statute and if you guys want to write it down, it's 70.74. So, so let me share the, okay. Blake, can you see this?
Yes.
Okay, so it's part 2, really. That's the this highlighted part right here that allows us to charge back because the tax assessment wasn't legal. So if this decision stands, there's also going to be the issue of people who've been paying taxes who shouldn't be paying taxes. And they're going to request refunds.
Mhm.
Now, we're only on the hook for the county portion of that because we paid out all the other municipalities, so they would be responsible for that. I think our goal right now in this should be to, and I haven't spoken to the tribe yet, but I think it's in everybody's best interest that we try to get the state to pay for this. Because I'll be honest, the state is the one that violated the treaty in the first place. They're the ones that required this land to be taxed. So they're the ones who created the violation in the first place. They should be held responsible for the damages that result from it. It's gonna, it affects Bayfield County also, it affects Sawyer County also. I can guarantee you the other tribes in the state are looking at their treaties to see if it can apply to them. This, I can guarantee you the state legislature is going to try to avoid this like the plague and stick it all on our taxpayers because, the school district actually owes us, say $1.2 million. What do? They're going to debt levy it and pay it, make everybody in the school district pay for it. So the same with the tech school, everybody, they're all just going to debt levy it and make all of us taxpayers pay for it. Which, I don't know, maybe the state legislature is fine with, maybe they're not. I don't know. And then there gets other issues about then what services do we have to provide? What services do the school have to provide? It gets really complicated and messy. And none of that can be looked at until we find out if the state's going to appeal it. And the DOR gives us guidance. So I may be giving you updates and those things will be changing regularly. One thing I told you, anything I told you today could be, next time I talk to you, could be completely different because there's different guidance out there. So my best thing is it's just going to be messy and expect twists and turns, and
A lot of finger pointing and such, all in different directions.
there will be, yes, that's going to be the case. And there's gonna be a lot of people that are not happy. In fact, I can guarantee you almost everybody's gonna be unhappy in some way, shape, or form.
Pat,
What about moving forward? Are we still gonna do the tax settlements to the other taxing entities?
As of today, barring a different court order, no, we are not gonna be taxing those entities, those properties. The US Appeals Court said that those properties are not taxable. We have to follow federal court decisions. I don't care what the state tells us. The federal court decision is superior to the state. So we will not be taxing those properties.
So on a positive note, and potentially a very positive note, long-term, we're not going to continue to give other taxing entity money that we
Nope.
haven't collected.
Nope.
So the bleeding stops now as
Yeah.
it currently stands, and that's the good news as
Right.
opposed to it continuing to bleed.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So no tax bills are gonna go out to those properties unless the courts tell us otherwise. And I just want to state that, I think it's Article 6 of the Constitution, the United States is a supremacy clause, which says federal rules are superior to state rules. So a federal appeals court decision outrules anything the state would tell us.
well, on that wonderful note,
Yeah, well, like I said, it's going to change daily.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the
some-
plus side for the county here in that decision. The bleeding ends. Because I'll be honest, if this would go on for 2 more years, we might be headed for bankruptcy court.
Yeah.
Have we notified our tech school and Ashland school districts?
I've tried calling the superintendent. He's not in for the rest of the week, so his assistant will be setting up a meeting with myself, with me and the business administrator. Because yes, I told her there's been an adverse court decision and there's a bunch of properties gonna move from the tax roll, so.
That'd be fun time for him to start. Oh, you good.
Yeah, and no, I have not spoken to the town yet. I'm sort of waiting on letting that one. But they know very well what's going on, so
Yeah,
I will talk to them at a later point.
okay. Anything else on that? In that wonderful little section? Otherwise, we can move on to schedule the next meeting date.
So, I have not spoken to Chairman Poofall, but I'm looking at executive to be September 6th. I believe the day after Labor Day. So the only dates I know in September that are no good are the 19th and 20th. Oh, and the 16th also.
And when we're at WCA?
Well, the 16th, I have to take my wife to the doctor for her
Yeah.
nerve issue. And then, yeah, and Supervisor Negro and I are both in the Dells on the 18th, 19th, 20th.
Yeah.
As far as getting information from the state or other places that are needed for the budget, do you have an idea of when we would have most of what we would need?
Shared revenue usually comes out in September.
Kind of when, do you have an idea?
It's usually the middle to end of September.
So if we go late September, we're more likely to have more information.
Yes. In the meantime, all these budgets will go in front of the executive committee too. And it'll go in front of the county board in September too. So at least they have an idea what they're looking at.
September 18th is a Thursday, if we're gonna stick with the date. Which I'm concerned we do.
Well, no,
Well, we
September
just-
18th is a Sunday.
Yeah. 18th,
That's a Sunday.
just with my calendar here. I know,
Yeah, I'll pull up the one online so you can see.
what the heck? It is just not rotating through. That makes no sense. There we go. You're right.
So here, let me go to the September because there might be dates already taken.
15th, 22nd, how far do we want to go? Because
Okay,
don't we
so-
have the big three to deal with?
Blake, can you see the calendar?
Two of them.
All right, so the 18th, 19th, and 20th are out because a bunch of us will be at the WCA convention. The 16th, I have to go to Duluth, take my wife to the doctor for her nerve issue.
15th, 22nd.
So whichever you want other than that.
Anyone? Anyone? I'm good with either one.
All right, well. Why don't you set the date, Laura?
Okay. Let me check one more calendar.
Well, it's always nice to get those shared revenue numbers, so we're more
Yeah.
likely to have them later.
Well, next meeting, we'll have HHS, sheriff, and land conservation,
Yeah.
plus
Say
courthouse.
the 22nd, because I have a PT appointment on the 15th.
All right, September 22nd, does that work? All right, and hopefully we'll have things. We'll have everything for you on one sheet too by then. With,
Ooh, it would be nice.
I'll have a giant spreadsheet to send everyone.
I am so excited.
And hopefully we'll actually have, I can't promise anything because
I know. I don't want to keep bringing my hopes up and. just-
no, I don't. And you know, we're at the mercy of Springbrook on some of this.
Yeah, I know. I know. But
So
okay.
September 22nd.
Sounds like a plan. Anyone else have that wonderful last motion everybody likes making?
All right.
I have a motion by Ron to adjourn. Do I have
I-
a second?
Blake will second.
Blake will second.
Okay, and then let's tentatively look at September 27th as county board for everyone. Just for your reference. Tentatively, I stress, tentatively.
It's just not scrolling through there. All right, 27th back up. On our motion to close the meeting, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you, guys.
See ya.
Just will not scroll through.